What up,
Ron,
Bruce? What's
how you
up?
doing, buddy?
I'm
Welcome
doing good.
back.
Thank you, thank you. Oh my God, Bruce, you've been killing it. You've been killing it with like your episodes and like people are loving it, man. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely have to thank all the new and welcome all the new
Mm.
subscribers. We've had a really good couple of weeks, so I have to send a big shout out to all of them and thank them for the support. It means a lot to us because Ron, you and I, for the longest time, past 2 years, we've been like this little grungy punk band playing in crappy clubs, and lately we've graduated to, I would say, theater level. Hopefully, that means we're on our way to arenas and eventually stadiums. And I promise you, Ron, when we do get to the stadium level, I will not complain like Roger Waters. How about that?
Wow, look at you just that was dude, you that was nutrient dense right there. There's chock full of goodness. And and we know clearly what side of the argument you're on now. Um yo, we have a really exciting topic today that I kind of want to dive right in on because um speaking of like moving up the ranks of like, grunge to theater level to, like larger venues. I love our band today. We're doing The Doors, we're doing LA Woman. I want to talk about the history of it. I want to talk about you brought the t-shirt. Come on. I want to tell you, I want to start off out of the gate. Do you think had Jim Morrison not died in 72, 72, right? 71, 72,
The 71, I believe. Yeah.
71, 71. Sorry.
Yep.
Had he not died, do you think they would have gotten to that level of playing like stadiums?
Oof. There were so many factors going on there as far as anyone who's like a Doors fan knows, like as they were getting to like 71, it was very, very ropey, dicey. And it's they're one of those bands that I think they did what they were meant to do. I don't think it was sustainable, especially with Jim's vices and things like that. I don't think they would have been able to go much longer. That's my theory, unless some of the historical things that we've seen, like had his appeal gone through and he cleared his head while in Paris and came back refreshed and maybe free of some of the vices and a little bit more focused. You know, who knows, right? That's
Yeah.
always left to speculation, and that's always the beauty of someone who dies young and leaves a beautiful corpse.
Yeah.
But my feeling is like I think they and we'll talk about this, especially with this album. I think there's an arc there that feels very complete.
Hmm.
And I have to give you props too, Ron, because I know that Jim has been a bit of a touchstone for you. I know in your shows you've referenced him quite a bit, and you were someone who actually helped me see the through line, the connection between Frank Sinatra,
Yeah.
Elvis, and Jim Morrison. And my significant other, Crystal, she's been pushing for us to do more Doors stuff, and she was the one who actually brought up the fact that we didn't mention him in our most underrated male singers, which now when I think about it, maybe we should have.
Yeah, it's so funny. That's what when I was listening to LA Woman and then of course like some of the other stuff, like to me something like Crystal Ship, right, which off their first album, like is I just think that's pure buttery goodness. Like from a vocal perspective, like he is just like on it there. And even like This Is the End, right? Like I think that is sung beautifully. Funny story about This Is the End, this kills me. Like, see, I came to, and I'm curious to hear how you came to the Doors. I came to the Doors when I was like 12 initially, or 11 rather. Sorry. My best friend's dad was into the Doors, so we'd listen. And then the movie came out, and then I was like, and that's like a horrible introduction to Jim Morrison.
Yeah,
It's like he's a psycho in the movie, but regardless, like I just think the gregarious charm and that like engagement and that like I mean the presence, and of course we didn't have YouTube back in the day, but like I was so invested in this guy. But I think like what really got me was his voice, like just how warm and like open and stuff. And so you think, and so coming to the introduction of the Doors and through the movie, um, and thinking about This Is the End and how dangerous that song is and all that stuff. And then I read a few years back, it's actually about his high school girlfriend. Like the lyrics he wrote are literally about his high school breakup. And it's
really.
like, and that's what I love about like as an adult now going back and God, with like, you like I was this morning, I was watching a bunch of performances from Isle of Wight, um the Bold 68, which I had that
Yeah.
album growing up, but I never saw the performance of it, you know. And like what a complex, what a complex band, what a complex individual, but like so not that psychopath, you know, from the movie is the point. So anyway, that's what was your introduction to the Doors?
Probably similar to like when we're talking about Floyd, they were omnipresent in classic rock radio. So I mean, their presence loomed large there. Of course, see the movie as well. But I think a lot of it was again through classic rock radio. They're just a staple,
Yeah.
omnipresent staple of that, and of course their legend looms large, and also just the legend of Jim Morrison as one of our most iconic frontmen of all time. Someone who was like probably the best looking singer since like Elvis Presley to come along, and someone who's been a touchstone for many other people as well. In fact, I recently did a video on U2's upcoming Vegas residency doing Octung Baby. And as part of that, was the Zoo TV tour. And Bono references Jim Morrison for that Fly character that he did for Zoo TV. I mean, it's all over that character from the look and the stage manners and mannerisms and all of that. So as a sort of rock icon, he's probably up there again with Elvis as one of the most iconic that we have.
In my bar mitzvah when I was 13, this is obviously many years ago, 30 years ago in fact, someone got me, this is like heartbreaking, they got me the coolest, like I was obsessed with Jim Morrison at the time, and like my obsession grew at that point, and I had all the CDs and someone got me this beautiful Jim Morrison poster, and where he's like got the thing where he's like leaning into the camera and he's topless, and there's so many cool like psychedelic images in the back, and we put it right when the party started, she came and she gave some, and I put it right by the DJ booth, right underneath, so everyone could see it. So in all the videos you're seeing, it's like you're seeing this iconic Jim Morrison picture. And then for some reason, somehow we like didn't take it home with us, and I never got to enjoy it after that day. But similar to Jim Morrison, it served its purpose, and the brightest bulb burns out quickest.
Oh, regrets. You have a few.
Could you imagine Jim Morrison singing "My Way"?
I could actually imagine it, believe it or not, especially in the
No.
more once you put that in my head. But anyway, the time to hesitate is through, Ron. Here we are. We've promised it for I think a few months now. Follow up to our Overrated or Not series. Doors, LA Woman. We got to dig into it.
I'm so happy you said that. I mean, that's why we put this out there before we start. Like, 'cause I'm always the annoying one, being like doing the jokes and the bits, and you said the time to hesitate is through.
Yeah, that's my little nod to you, Ron.
No, the good-looking guy always gets away with it, though. It's okay. It's okay. All right, let's dive in. Is it overrated or underrated? LA Woman.
Well, here's the thing too, and I have to say right off the bat, because we get this a lot with our Overrated or Not series in the comments section. Like people will ask, like, oh, why are you even asking this? It's obviously not overrated. Da 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 da. But the truth is, and I know this, Ron, as people who follow pop culture closely, it doesn't matter what is in the public domain. It doesn't matter how much it's sold, how popular it is. There are always pockets of people that will always say that something is either overrated or is not as good as people say. So every album that we've covered, it has had its detractors. So it's a question that's always worth asking. And the Doors as a band also, like I've read a lot of noise about them being sort of an overrated band in general and stuff. So that's definitely out there in the conversation, in the kind of classic rock world. So I think it's most definitely worth getting into. But also to me, that's always a clear sign that that's a band that really did some powerful work, because when you have a body of work where you have different pockets of fandom, that tells me that you grew, you took chances, you took creative risks. It can't all be one album like AC/DC, which from them, we want that because it's the perfect recipe, the perfect formula. I don't want AC/DC doing country or prog or anything else,
Yeah.
But for other bands, there's much wider trajectories, bands we've covered in the past for sure. So it's definitely a question worth asking. And for this album too, because of how it sits in the catalog. But I have to ask you, Rob, before we get into that, just as a band in general, how have you always ranked the Doors?
Yeah, Doors has always been in my top 5. and continue to be. I got more critical this time around listening to the album and listening to their other stuff, and I definitely have a different perspective now than when I was growing up. But I mean, just from a emotional standpoint, they're family to me. You know what I mean? Like they're like this is they're in my life. You know, they've been in my life the whole time. So
Yeah.
I'd say that top five for sure. Um, as I get into so musically, I think each one of them is a spectacular musician. I saw a documentary where Jim Morrison's dad, who's apparently such a dick, like this is like obviously filmed years after his death, and he's like, I never saw him as a singer. He's not a singer. He's not. I'm like,
Mm,
what is wrong with you? You know, and he's like, I never
yeah.
heard him sing actually. And then he like admitted to not listening to the music. And I'm like, that sucks, man. I see how you get this kid, you know? But I think each one of them similar um to the Who or you know, we like Zeppelin or whatever. I think each one of them brought so much individually. And yet like the fusion of you know Ray's classical piano, Robbie's like finger picking and like flamenco guitar, right? John's like jazz drums. I think it's interesting with like the poppy songs, it coalesces beautifully.
Yeah.
And then with like the more abstract shamany, like clearly Jim had a lot more say on those, maybe. Like to
Hmm.
me, it started to feel listening to it this time, like you got four guys going in different directions, but they don't have the personalities. Like they don't have the Jim has the personality, but the musicians don't have the personalities to really like fight one way or the other, you know? So I
Hmm.
almost felt like I hate saying it, but I almost and I bet if Ray heard me saying this, like he'd freak out. He'd roll in his grave. But I just think they're almost studio musicians sometimes. And I
Hmm.
feel really bad saying that. So that's my long ass answer. What about you?
Interesting. Well, it's almost like a tale of a couple bands because, like you said, you have again as musicians, they're top notch, right? You have guys with
Yeah.
like jazz leanings and those kinds of chops, like you said, the flamenco chops, even a bit of Ravi Shankar, an influence in there too, because I think both Densmore and Krieger studied with him. I have a lot of respect for all of them as far as this is a real band too, because they're all contributing in terms of songwriting. There are co-writes in there. Krieger came up with monster songs in their catalog, so it's not just all the Jim show. Obviously, when you have a frontman like Jim, that's going to get the majority of the attention. But then, like I said, you have the focus pop, and then you have the stuff that kind of longer pieces and ragas and meandering things, and some of Jim's spoken word stuff, which can sound a little pretentious at times. So it's almost a tale of multiple bands, but they do have an incredible range. I have to give them that.
Yeah.
It's and for a band in the '60s, I mean, it's dark stuff too. It's really dark. I mean, I went back and listened to all the trajectory of all of the albums, and you think back, it's like, yeah, these guys got away with a lot.
Unknown Soldier, Spanish Caravan, right? Like all these like even like Texas oh my God, Texas Radio.
Yeah, and the big beat,
And
yeah,
the big beat, yeah. Their cover of uh they cover the what's his name? Beckett, not Beckett. The German, oh show me the way to the
oh,
next
to the
whiskey bar.
next, yeah, whiskey bar,
Yeah,
yeah.
but who are they? Oh my God, I can't remember the composer's name, but like
But the Wasp is the other one you're thinking
the
about. Yeah, the
Wasp was the
Wasp.
other one.
Yeah,
Wasp, yeah, right. Like these are like seriously intense, right?
yeah, yeah. And
And
with this album too, you're kind of going. It's a full circle moment too,
yeah,
because it's you have the early influences, and I as a band too. Talking about like how I rank them. They're also one of the few bands like from album one. I felt like they were fully formed on that album. In that sense, like I don't think there was like massive growth that followed that. They were just great from the beginning. I felt like it all crystallized pretty well on that first album. And this, on the first three albums, it's a pretty consistent, kind of blues, psychedelic blues sound. And then you have a couple of instances that lead to this album. One of them is the break with longtime producer Paul Rothchild, because obviously following the Soft Parade, which was more strings and horns and that kind of influence. I know that there were creative differences, and I know that starting off these sessions, he wasn't that enthusiastic about like the energy they were bringing and the material. So they break with that, and so they're co-producing along with their longtime engineer Bruce Bodnick on this on LA Woman. But then the other thing we can't ignore is too the weight of the Miami incident, Miami trial, you know, in the Dinner Key auditorium where, you know, Jim was charged with indecent exposure and, you know, public profanity and drunkenness and all that stuff. And the weight of that trial and the effect that it had on live performances. You can see it at the Isle of Wight where he's very reserved and there's like almost like an inner rage going on there. Yeah, very inwardly intense kind of thing going on. And all of that just hovering over this. So you have the weight of that and the intensity of that, along with, again, them taking more command of the music. But ironically, relationships were really good, apparently, within the band at this particular time. So they must have just been rallying around Jim. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Bertolt Brecht is what I was trying to say before.
Okay.
They cover for Alabama song Whiskey Bar, like they covered one of his songs that dun 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 dun. It's anyway.
And then I know, and there's like weird other influences like Chopin in this album as well. You know, for Manzarek, I know he references him at some point too. So there's all kinds of always touchstones for them as well.
But you're so right. You're so right. You really hear it with Jim, like vocally. You hear it. You hear the exhaustion. You hear like the strain, like throughout this album. And like Riders on the Storm is a beautiful song, right? Like it's stunning and it's so peaceful and it's so melodic and textured. I mean, that's like I think one of their just like opuses, you know.
I agree.
Right, but the rest of the stuff where it's like screaming and like and that spoken word shit, like I don't know, I don't like it. I don't like that side. And to be fair, I just started watching Morbius today and I don't mind it. So like I just want like the audience like you don't attack me, but take it in a grain of salt how poppy I am. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
Like so yeah, like you hear the strain, you hear the stress. I mean, this album definitely sounds like a last album, like almost like Abbey Road, you know, which even though they're like vocally, musically with Abbey Road, they're in their prime, but like you can tell. I don't think I'm just imposing it. Like you hear it, like I don't know. I almost heard the strain more than with other albums. With this album,
you hear a fracture in this music for you, right? Kind of, yeah.
Fracture.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different sound too for them because it's more live. That's the thing. It's capturing more of live feel. So it's stripping away a lot. And I think that's the aim of it. It wasn't going for a lot of overdubs. So definitely you're not getting it, you know, as polished as like the first few albums. So it's a different sound there. There's a more of an immediacy. But the one thing I will say that I do really appreciate about this album is I feel like it's really where Jim, and again, I think he was fully formed from the get-go, but I think he's really in command of his voice here. I really feel like he grew into that elder statesman blues voice that he always saw himself as. I feel it really here, and I feel that the tension is there. And I think with the additional lived-in experiences that he had, you know, multiple lifetimes of experiences compressed in a very short time, I hear it in this, and it's like it doesn't sound like you know, I mean, they're American, they're one of our better American bands, but it's not like English bands covering blues where there's always a little bit of that faux blues thing. This kind of it had an authentic feel in a lot of these tracks.
100%. That actually that's what I noticed the most too. Yeah, like the most too. That's also what I noticed. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, very bluesy. And you're absolutely right. He sounds, I mean, he has this weight, like he has this like groundedness of like just like a blues weathered, like he's seen it all. 100%. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, and you know, the other guys have always mentioned that he knew he was going to be moving, going off to Paris and do his thing. And you know, I think there were past instances where he wanted to leave the band, and Ray, you know, has always been a champion for him and always had continued to speak so well for him years after. Always convinced him to kind of stay in the fold, kind of do one more album. But you kind of feel like he knows this is the end. Like LA Woman is like almost like his ode to LA, but like it's like, yeah, I love you, but I'm out of here kind of thing. You have songs like Hyacinth House, which is it just has a sadness to it, you know, the lyrics referencing the need for like real friendship and things like that. So again, sort of that cloud that hovered over him in particular, you feel it on this album.
Yeah. You know, it's so tragic too. I heard an interview maybe with John or with Rob, I forget who said it, but that his last performance, they like he just he was done, like the last tour, he was done, and he was in the middle of the show, and he just started like he took like the microphone stand and just started hitting the stage, trying to break the
Mhm.
stage, and like he was just done, like he couldn't do it anymore, and like one of the roadies came up and just like put his arm around him and was like, it's okay, you don't have to do this anymore, and like I just thought like that's how much reverence they had for this guy. He couldn't have been the psycho from the movie, like they had so much love for just to your point about Ray like being a champion, like they loved him.
Yeah, they did. I've read all the memoirs, that
Yeah.
they've done. All of the survive. Well, up to a certain point, the surviving members had done their memoirs, and yeah, I mean, you could tell the reverence. Now, some of the stories are true, especially like Jim's alcoholism had gotten really bad, and so that's definitely in there. But I think what the film didn't capture was his artistry.
Mm.
I think it didn't really do service to him as a creative entity. It all just went for like the sensationalism and the sort of spiritual symbolism, all of that kind of thing. It was basically um, Oliver Stone using it as a springboard for like his own trip. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're at some point we'd be due a much better Doors biopic, but
That'd be cool, but don't get Austin Butler because he gets really committed.
but also we talk about like the Doors on film, in reference to this. Like obviously there's the Hollywood Bowl, Isle of Wight,
Mhm.
and the sad thing about this is that those are probably the two most famous Doors films that we have, the most well chronicled. And in both of them, Jim's out of it for different reasons because
Yeah.
apparently at the Hollywood Bowl, legend has it, he'd taken some acid beforehand, and so like halfway through the show, he's kind of like tripping balls and stuff. And then obviously at Isle of Wight, it's just the weight of the world is on him, and he's just
Yeah.
stationary, very intense, but performing vocally top notch too, by all accounts. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we never really. I don't think on film we don't have like the most dynamic scenes of Jim, which we know happened. We've heard those stories as well.
Yeah, like you have a lot of the TV recordings,
Yeah,
like you had Sullivan and all that stuff, but yeah, you don't have like the real gritty like you would now where people would have their phones out.
yeah. I mean, I
Um,
would be able to see footage of that Miami concert.
oh, who wouldn't? Jesus. There's I've
Because
seen
apparently he's being provocateur intentionally. Like he had seen some, I think it was a Living Theater, like some theater troupe, and they're provocateurs, and so part of him is that, and part of it is the tension of a band once it graduates to like stadium level, or not stadium, but like arena level, and the apathy of that, and bands clamoring for your greatest hits, and here you are trying to like do stuff, and just trying to instigate, and it didn't help that being under the substance
right.
abuse that were going on. But
I've seen pictures though, like you've seen pictures, right, from Miami?
oh
Like,
yeah,
yeah, so I mean he's in it. He looks like he's in it to win it. But this is kind of the question is like the hits were such good hits, and like and
yeah,
like
even off this album for sure.
especially on this album, right? Like
Yeah,
Every Woman is like such a Doors song, and
Love
it's like
Her Madly,
Love Her
Riders on the
Madly.
Storm. I mean, mega songs on this. So it's not
Epic.
like this is going out on a whimper. This is actually going out on a pretty good high for them.
Right.
But
So
overall, like,
yeah,
your take is still like if we go to like the verdict for you, Ron,
yeah, I'm ready.
hit us, give it to us straight. What do you think? Overrated or not for LA Woman?
LA Woman, the album, I would say is overrated. I'm so sorry if I've offended anyone. I'm genuinely sorry. I love this band. I love this album. I think it's overrated because LA Woman, Riders on the Storm, like the hits are hits. The hits are amazing,
Yeah.
right? Love Her Madly, amazing. However, I think there's a lot of stuff in there that's just like, like it's just that nonsensical. I
Filler?
shouldn't say nonsensical. Filler.
Filler
It's
for
all
you?
filler, and they're not gelling. Like I think this band that I love so much my whole life, I think that like they don't stand out to me like a Zeppelin, a Who, Pink Floyd. Like they don't have the balls to me like the Bollocks. Like they don't have like the grit like those other bands that became institutional, became stadium sellout bands.
Mm.
They don't have that charm and they don't have that drive. It doesn't seem like it. You know what I mean? I think when I look at it, like what I've really thought about this few weeks of prepping, I'm like, they were at the right place at the right time. They are super unique. They really do stand out in that
Yeah.
market. They totally stand out, right? the fusion, the jazz, psychedelic, classical, shaman, like, and he is so engaging. Awesome. It doesn't add up for me to a spectacular album though, where I love every one of those songs.
Gotcha.
I just don't. I just don't. Like, it's a lot of anger and screaming, and like, I don't. It's not
Yeah,
a
fair
joyous
enough.
experience.
And you bring up a good point because the Doors always seem to hover right below that periphery of
Hmm.
like Beatles, Stones, Who, Zepp, Pink Floyd. You know, they're I don't think they ever break that top tier,
No.
although the people who love them, you know.
Right.
So it's one of those where and you know, maybe they were never meant to be that because they were just so a little bit different, you know, and also
Yeah.
sonically they're very very different. Like if you think about like Ray's organ touches, like who would think to really make that a primary sound? And I
Right.
can see where some people say that it lends the music sometimes a kind of cocktail jazzy
Right.
cheesiness. I've always just accepted it as part of their sound, you know, and I like a lot of the keyboard stuff, but that could be one of the elements. It depends how much tolerance they have for like again some of Jim's some would say pretensions or whatever, flights of fantasy or whatever.
If you will.
Um, yeah. Now, my verdict is that it's not overrated. I think it's well rated for how people have ranked it within their canon. I don't think people there are a few that say it's their best album ever, but I
Mm.
think people just say it's one of their best, and I would agree that it's actually one of their best because it's a nice full circle moment. I love that it's back to just a band, a live vibe going on. We have to give credit too because there's another Elvis connection on this album. Do you know what it is, Ryan?
Uh. Uh.
So they brought in from the TCB band Jerry Sheff on bass because
Oh,
you know, obviously with the Doors, and you know this, they never had a on
a
stage
bassist.
bass
Yeah.
player.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
always you know Ray with
Ray.
the yeah with the Fender Rhodes bass piano on top of the Vox Continental. But for the studio albums, they always had session players, and so here they had Jerry Sheff, and I think Jerry Sheff really plays beautifully on this album and brings a lot. And I know Jim was just overwhelmed to have like someone from Elvis's band play on board on this.
Well, and two, there's a story where where I think it's Riders on the Storm, or I forget what song it. Riders. I'm so not prepared. I'm so sorry. I'm really tired. I forgot. It was a long day yesterday, but where Ray, I think it was yes, it was Riders on the Storm, and he does this bass line, this super complicated bass
Yeah,
line, and the bass is like, cool, sounds great on keyboard,
yeah,
not playable, but he
yeah,
figured out a way to like manipulate it.
yeah.
I love that stuff.
Yeah, Ray was happy with it because it all rested on one hand. But I know for Jerry, he
Yeah,
initially had a hard time. He's like, "Oh man," you
and you
know.
had to
So
like figure it out like different ways. Yeah.
yeah, but his playing on the title track, I love his tone on it.
Mhm.
You know, and of course I loved his playing. You know, as part of like Elvis's Vegas presentation and stuff too. So we have
Yeah.
to give him a shout out as well. But no, I like how they sound on this album. I also give it higher marks because of where I think Jim is with his voice and command of his vocal instrument. So on this one, we'll agree to disagree.
For sure. I see the point. I think it's an amazing album, but I think it doesn't reach this, it doesn't soar to the heights, of like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's very hard because I don't think they ever topped that first album. To be honest with you, and
that's how I feel.
that's the flip side of a band. Like I think Pearl Jam's similar. Like when you have a first album that just works that well, it's very hard, and I don't think they ever topped it. This, like I said, it was more just I like the poetry of it. The
Whoa,
poetry.
you just dropped some serious Pearl Jam uh controversy right there.
Well, there probably be people again like disagree, but I don't think they
Yeah.
ever topped that first album because again, it to me it reminds me of the Doors' first album that you have the hit after hit and very focused and stuff, and like
Mhm.
afterwards, it's for me it is what it is. So I'll let that
You
sit
have
out
like
there.
you have this look like you want to say it's indulgent. And I think, right? Like I think a lot of these tracks on LA Woman are indulgent, where it's like it'd
That
be
was your
cool.
take on it.
That's my
Yeah.
take. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe like for you with the blues stuff, the jamminess, maybe because you're a guy who's really like keen on focused pop, and so I could see where this album, where it's more blues jams and there's a looseness to it. Maybe for you, it's just like
Yeah.
not. You would like something that's a little more focused, like how their first album was,
Like
where
their
it was
first
very
album.
concise. So I totally get wwhere you're coming from, and actually I appreciate it because it's useful to disagree on these from time to time.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you're bringing up a good point that it's making me think because I'm like, because I feel lame for having that pop sensibility, you know, like for like one, but I go like, if you give me a great, like if I go to the restaurant and like you give me like excellent, like super yummy, tasty food from the jump, like where it's all on one plate, you know, like it's all on one plate, it's all like organized. And so I'm like, oh, I want that next time I go. And I think to their credit, they evolved, they experimented, and they had that freedom because they weren't the top tier, right? Like they were in
Yeah,
their lane, so they could create to their heart's content. I don't think they were money driven, you know, even like, right, like they're not a machine. The Doors wasn't like this like corporate entity, and we've seen it in the like every time they've tried to get back together as a group with a different singer, like it hasn't. I mean, did any of those like matriculate like it like?
yeah, right. It was always, I think, just out there, just
Yeah,
kind of bringing the catalog to a new generation, but it wasn't like anyone, was trying, like basically trying to, as Queen have done, you're not going to replace Freddie Mercury. You're just, getting out there and presenting it to like new generations of fans.
I'm glad you brought up Queen because I think, but there's something about Adam Lambert though
Mhm.
that embodies not Freddie, like not 100, but like I think that actually works, right? Like Adam
Well,
Lambert,
he
like yeah,
gets the spirit of it. I think he gets the
yeah,
spirit. And I think, at first when they chose him, it was like you kind of scratch your head. But if you watch any of the live performances, he gets the spirit of it. It doesn't necessarily mean he has to do all the vocals perfectly, but he definitely gets the balance of the quiche, the camp,
yep,
the rock. So I think he does a serviceable job for what it is they're trying to do.
right.
You get into the weeds whenever you try to do the comparisons. So
Right. So I won't get it. But it's like I just think like they that those pop like that first album was so nutrient dense. It was so direct that I'm like I think you like that taught me that I was like, oh, I like that. I want that. You know, you're right. So when as they experimented, I just didn't go with them on the journey, I think. You know, so that's a really good point.
and that's fair enough. I'm sure a lot of people who
Yeah.
are watching would agree, or they'll agree, disagree, but I'm sure there are quite a few that would have their take on this album, and that's
Like
we're all interested in that.
I'm totally busting balls right now. But Crystal, your significant other, does she sit there and go, oh, I have to listen to Unknown Soldier?
We'll have to ask her. You know what, Crystal, write in the comments section and let Ron know.
Yeah, like is that the one where you're like, oh my god, I love that song.
She might surprise you.
I know. I know she goes deep into the catalog, but so like Bruce, like how do you want to end this? Like, do you feel like we got this? Do you feel like we
Yeah,
scratched the
I think
surface or we got deep?
no, I think we've summed it up pretty good. I think it was a very fair shake of it. I think you definitely articulated your reasons for why you find it overrated. I think we covered enough general ground on it for sure. The next step, really, for us, obviously, those of you who stuck with us to the end, we thank you. If you like what you saw, give us a like, give us a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to the channel. And as we always say, it's the channel. It's not about us. It's really about the conversation. So we know a lot of Doors fans out there. And again, maybe you don't like this album. Maybe there are others you prefer. Let us know your thoughts. Do you love LA Woman? Is it underrated in your eyes? Overrated? How do you think it sits within the catalog? And the Doors in general, how do you rank them? Are they one of our greats? Do they sit below the periphery? Or not so much? Let us know.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Hopefully, fairly soon. So take care, everyone. Till next time. Peace.